Most entrepreneurs think their biggest problem is marketing or leads or hiring the right people or finding that right coach or guru or pricing or operations or you name it. But what if I told you that none of those are actually the real problem when it comes to growing your business? What if the thing that's holding your business back the most is you? And specifically, that part of you that you've never been willing to look at closely and honesty. See, most people think, or they've heard, that they're their greatest bottleneck in their business, and that's absolutely true. And they think that, or they've been told, that we just need to get out of the way and delegate systems and do all of these different things, all these external things that are going to really change your business. But what I want to talk about today is something that almost nobody in the business world talks about. At least I don't hear it too often. And that's Carl Jung's concept of the shadow and how it might be the single most important thing that you ever examine as a founder that's really going to take your business to the next level or fundamentally change your business. But most importantly, make you a better human being, make you a more well-rounded person, and make you attract those things that you want because you are already those things. So let's talk about what the shadow actually is. I think it's a very misinterpreted concept, but it's something that is going to change your entire life. So Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. He was a peer of Sigmund Freud. Freud, of course, is probably more well known as a household name, but Carl Jung is the one that believed that the human psyche is not just the conscious mind or the part that you're aware of, but also your to-do list and shows up to meetings. Like, that's not all there is. He believed that there's another layer, a deeper layer, and he called it the shadow. So the shadow, it sounds so dramatic and it sounds so evil or villainous, but the shadow is not evil. It's not the dark side in the Hollywood or the Netflix sense of the term. The shadow is simply everything that you've disowned about yourself. It is the things that you're not willing to look at. It's your traumas that you've stored and the viewpoint that's been put on you by society or by friends or by family, and you just simply don't want to look at it. So that part of you is disowned, put in a corner, and that's why it's called the shadow. So think about it like this. From the time you were a child, you learned what was acceptable and what wasn't. You became confident, but not arrogant. Be successful, but stay humble. Want money, but don't be too greedy and don't show up. Show up, but don't take up too much space. You know, these are the things that we're taught growing up. It's that balance. And we learn them through society on the playground, through our teachers, through our peers, and most importantly, through our parents, even our government. And so you take these things that you learn, and there's parts of yourself that just simply don't fit that mold. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But on a broader sense, there's rage, there's neediness, ambition, fear, and grief that you pushed away because it just doesn't fit the narrative of society. You buried it. You told yourself that they weren't there, but they are, and they don't go away. And what I really love about what Carl Jung understood that most people never do is that those parts, they don't just disappear. They go underground. They run from you. But they show up in patterns. They show up in relationships. They show up in reactions. They show up in decisions. They show up in your business. And I want to talk about business specifically today. The shadow doesn't go away when you ignore it. I love Michael Singer. He's a great author of a book, Untethered Soul, and he just came out with a new book called Wisdom Untethered. And what Michael Singer says, and he likens it to this, the stuff that doesn't go away, it's like going out to eat, getting a container of food, bringing it home and just putting it in your closet day after day after day after day. And how's that going to smell? Well, your shadow won't go away when you ignore it. It just gets louder and it gets more creative about how it expresses itself, how it gets your attention, and how it could potentially sabotage your life, your business, your relationships, your health. And we need to look at this. So why does this matter specifically for entrepreneurs? You might be thinking, okay, this is all interesting psychologically, this is all airy-fairy, like what does it have to do? It's woo-woo, as Joe Rogan might say, but what does this have to do with me and my business? Everything. This has everything to do with your business, because your business is the most accurate mirror of your inner world that exists. Every hiring decision that you make, every pricing conversation that you have, every moment you avoided a difficult client, every time you've undercharged, every time you've over-delivered or under-delivered out of fear, all of it is data about what's going on beneath the surface of your psyche. Take that in for a moment. That is where you want to be and where you want to go. Your unexamined life, your shadow, is preventing you from getting there. High-achieving entrepreneurs are actually more susceptible to the shadow dynamic than most people, I think. These are the people going out there and buying that Porsche 911, flexing on social media, dripping from head to toe in Louis Vuitton and Gucci. The reason is very simple that people do this. It's the same drive that makes you build something from nothing, that relentless ambition, that refusal to quit, that showing off, but it has a shadow attached to it. And transcending those peacock behaviors is what's going to really leave your mark on this world. Instead of running from it, it's something you're trying to prove, right? So look at it like that. You will always keep hitting the same ceiling with those types of behaviors. Different year, different revenue number, but the same feeling. Different car, different vacation, maybe different spouse, different flex, but still that same core feeling. And if we can get a grip on that, if we can get a handle on that, we can truly do something that other people can't, which is, and I truly mean this, the expression that's unique within you that nobody else has. The door to that is through the shadow. So let's talk about like something concrete, like the 3 most common entrepreneurial shadows and how they show up. Let me give you these 3 patterns that frequently show up in founders and owner-operators and see if any of it lands with you. So let's talk about shadow pattern number 1, the fraud shadow. This is the most common one, and it shows up in 2 completely opposite ways, which is what makes it so hard to recognize. And these things are sneaky, they're subtle, they're not apparent to everybody. To the trained eye they might be, but this one, the fraud shadow, shows up in a lot of different ways. So on the one end, the fraud shadow makes you chronically undercharged for your services or your goods. You're sitting on genuine expertise, and I'm totally guilty of this myself. I did this for many years. Years of hard-won knowledge, technical expertise, strategy, case studies, and you're practically giving it away because deep down you actually don't believe. Looks like my light just went out. Now I'm more of in a shadow, but we're going to roll with it. What was I saying? The fraud, right, yes. So deep down you don't actually believe that you've earned the right to charge what you're worth, right? You feel like you're an inner fraud. Even though you have the expertise, the results, you're waiting for somebody to expose you for being the low scum that you really think you are deep down. And this keeps your prices low as preemptive protection. On the other hand, on the other spectrum of this, the fraud shadow can also make you aggressively overcompensate. We see this all the time online with the bros driving the cars and the Andrew Tates and whatever, the loudest person in the room, the constant signaling of the watches and the jewelry and the women and blah, 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 right? This is actually the fraud shadow just in inverse. It's the need to make sure everybody knows your credentials before you've even earned a right to have a conversation with somebody. That's not confidence. That's just an overcompensation of the shadow, the fraud shadow, performing because that real confidence that you have isn't in there. It's not deep down. And we all know this. We all talk about the person with the sports car who has the small package, right? We've all heard that before. But that is just the inverse of a fraud feeling, a deep, deep shadow that's unintegrated. And I haven't used the word integrated yet, but it's a great word because that's what we're here to do, to integrate the shadow. So the person who has done that work, they charge what they're worth appropriately, without apology, and doesn't need the room or the car or the Rolex to validate them because they're already self-validated. When you come from that place, you're going to show up in your business more authentically. Another pattern that I see, we'll talk about shadow pattern number 2, is the control freak. This is the founder who cannot delegate. I want to be careful here because there's a version of you that looks completely rational, and I don't want you to beat yourself up if you relate to 1, 2, or all of these different shadows. But this one looks completely rational because you tell yourself, my standards are just higher than everybody else's. I can do it faster and better than anyone else. Nobody really gets the vision that I have, so I need to do all of this. And maybe some of what you're saying there is true. You probably do. You should have a better vision than anyone else in your organization. You should be able to do it. You should be able to run circles about the other people, the juniors in your organization or the novices. But if you have been saying that for 5, 10 years and your business is stalling and it can't even function without you in every room, every decision, every deliverable, every email, every Slack message, then that's not a hiring problem. That's a shadow problem. The control shadow. And I am guilty of this one for sure. For sure. The control shadow, it usually comes from one of 2 places. Either you're feeling that your worthiness is entirely tied to being needed. So let that sink in. You need to feel needed. Essential. You want to feel essential. You feel that if I'm not essential, I don't matter. There's also the potential of a deep distrust that you learned somewhere early on that the world is not safe unless you're personally managing it. You don't want to let go. Letting go is central to this particular issue that people struggle with. Either way, the shadow is making the org chart, and your org chart is a big circle with just your name into it. It's a very expensive way to run a business. It's expensive in time. It's expensive if you put a dollar value to your time and what it's worth and what you can do in your business and how you're wrapped up in all the minutia, you'll see how expensive it is. So let's talk about shadow pattern number 3. This is the visibility shadow. This one is particularly common in experts, people who are genuinely exceptional at what they do, but they self-sabotage every single time they get close to real recognition, real accolade, and really being seen. They start the YouTube channel and they quietly abandon it after 3 videos. They write the book, they write the proposal to get funded, to get some PR, to get an agent, but they never send it. They get invited to speak, and at the last minute, they find a reason to cancel. They build something remarkable, and it truly is remarkable, and then somehow they make sure that nobody important ever sees it. This is truly a sad way to be, because this person with this shadow issue has a real business idea that they need to share. They have a real great love for what they do, but something inside of them shows up as procrastination, and they just won't do it. And from the outside, it looks like perfectionism, or it looks like being too busy, but underneath this, the visibility shadow is usually protecting against something specific. It's either the fear of being truly seen and found lacking. I know we've all had those experiences growing up where people pointing the finger and laughing at you or whatever. Or, and this one is a little bit less talked about, but it's the fear of outgrowing the people that they love, the people around them, their family, their friends, outgrowing that, of becoming someone their community no longer recognizes and getting ostracized and outed because you're too successful, too good. And visibility requires you to claim something. If people are watching, you need to claim it. And claiming something means you can also lose that thing that you claim. The man in the arena quote from Teddy Roosevelt is a really great example. That man in the arena is willing to be seen, is willing to be visible. So this shadow says you'd rather be comfortable and never claim anything at all than be seen. And so many people, they go 90% of the way, 95% of the way, and then it gets real and they abandon it. So I've covered 3 things here that you probably could relate to a little bit of each one. And if you're a business owner and entrepreneur, your work is to deal with this stuff. And let's talk about integration, because this is how you actually work with the shadow, how you make that unconscious conscious, and how you really grow yourself and your business, your family, your relationships. Everything gets better when you do this. And Jung called this process individuation, becoming a genuine, whole person rather than a curated performance of one, the persona, the mask that we all wear. Now, once you do this shadow work, you might want to wear a mask anyways, but at least you're doing it from a place of awareness. I want to give you a practical 3-step framework for starting that process in the context of your business. So, number 1, notice the pattern that dominates your shadow. Everybody has a dominant pattern. So start paying attention and noticing what that is, because you can't change anything that you cannot see. So the first step is simply observation without judgment. This is where journaling really comes in handy. This is where paying attention to your dreams is really helpful. So start paying attention to your reactions, particularly the ones that are disproportionate to this scenario. The client conversation that made you way angrier than it should have. The pricing conversation that you've been having or avoiding for months that you really don't want to do. What is the thing that you're procrastinating on? What is the thing that's making you angry? What is the thing that's stealing your joy, robbing you of your good feelings? That is an indicator right there that you need to do something in the shadow work. If it's something that has self-sabotage attached to it, or if something that could be gaining momentum that you're putting off, the shadow is announcing itself through the intensity of feelings that you have, and you should pay attention to that. When your reaction is bigger than the situation warrants, that right there is the signal. Something underneath has been activated. So get curious about what that is instead of justifying it, drinking, doing something to avoid it, whatever. There's many ways to avoid these things, but get curious about it and start writing. Writing every day, writing it down. Step 2, name what it is exactly that it's protecting. So the shadow isn't your enemy. Don't fight any of this stuff. It's only going to make it worse. This is the part that people miss. They start launching a full-blown invasion assault on their shadow. But the shadow was developed for a reason. It was protecting something real at some point in your life. There was a part of you that learned these behaviors, such as undercharging for your services, and is protecting you from getting rejected at a time when rejection felt like genuinely dangerous. Well, that's no longer the case. We're full-blown adults. We're entrepreneurs. We're building out there. You don't need to be protected from rejection anymore. But that's where the shadow comes from. It was helping you. It was helping you feel more in control. And that part of you that controls everything was keeping you safe in an environment where things were genuinely unpredictable. And many entrepreneurs come from situations, childhoods, that were unpredictable, that were chaotic. Dan Martell has a really great book called Buy Back Your Time, and in that book he talks about entrepreneurs are disproportionately coming from rough childhoods. So that pattern needs to be seen. So don't fight it. Instead of fighting the pattern, just start asking a different question. What is this protecting me from? Sorry, my phone's going off here. What is this protecting me from? Where did this behavior originally come from that it was going to make me feel safe? When you can answer that question honestly, and I mean like true honesty, not just an intellectual answer, but from the heart, a felt answer. When you do that, something shifts. Pattern loosens up, it starts to feel better, and you're going to see things clearly. So choose that deliberately instead of reacting. And this is where the integration comes in. So let me know which pattern you feel most dominates your business, your life, and leave a comment. I'd like to hear about it, because there's not going to be a single dramatic moment of transformation. It's going to take time, and small daily choices are going to help you grow. So leave that comment, and I look forward to the next conversation.